Welcome back, everybody. The History Guy here, picking up right where I left off in the last episode. This is Salem Church, which you get into as soon as the Battle of Chancellorsville is over. There's no time to refit, regroup, anything. And so you can see these are not forces that have large numbers of manpower available to them. So I just have to rush as best I can up to the objective and get myself into a decent position to defend. So what I want to do is I want to rush these. I want to get these guns right up the middle, so they'll move quickly without having to hit the woods and everything. And then I'm just gonna bring my forces up and try to build a strong battle line, maybe right along here. If I can get it, I'll go all the way up to right here. But I'm not sure that's going to be necessarily possible. But I'll get into position and we'll see what happens. Alright, with 2 hours to go, I'm making first contact with the enemy. And he appears to be up in these woods and also out here. So I'm outnumbered heavily. I mean, it's pretty significant. It's 2-1. So it's going to be interesting to see how and if I'm able to hold against these kinds of numbers. I think it's going to be difficult. Well, thankfully so far he's really not being all that aggressive, because outnumbering me 2-1, if he decides to, he could really put the hurt on me. So he's kind of still waiting to get all these huge units into position. And in the meantime, he's giving me plenty of time to maneuver and try to gang up on units here and there as I have opportunity. And then I just got to hang on for dear life for another hour and 45 minutes. These numbers just are not favorable for me. He's lost about 1,200 men. I've lost about 500, but as he gets closer and he starts advancing on me, I'm going to have problems. Well, I'm holding my own pretty well up on the left side. A couple of units have routed now. He's really not being all that aggressive, and I really like it. It's making my job a whole lot easier. So right now he's lost about 2,700 men, and I've lost about 900. So about 3-1 casualties. And it helps that I've got my artillery all kind of concentrated here, and they're firing pretty successfully on some of these positions. And some of these units, for example, Ransom, is inflicting heavy losses compared to what he's taken. So is the Orphan Brigade. Jackson, same thing. So all three of these brigades on the left side are just really doing a number on his forces. It's kind of a different story on the right, especially Mahone. I'm kind of worried about that situation because he's lost so many men. But there's only an hour to go. Logan, 569 kills and 16 deaths. So it's going really well right now. Alright, we just caused another 2 units to break in the center. Just very concerned as I watch the losses right here with Mahone. I'm just afraid that he may end up breaking just because he's under so much fire. And I don't really have the option of reinforcing him anywhere very easily. I'm going to try to get Brown to break so that I can move these skirmishers up into these woods. Maybe even put the Orphan Brigade up there in those woods. See, both of these brigades here are firing on Mahone, which is making it kind of difficult. I'm going to move Forrest up a little bit. Only 57 minutes to go. And my casualties stand at about 1,400 to his 4,300. Really can't complain about that, especially in a battle where I'm outnumbered. Or it started anyway, I was outnumbered 2-1. So we'll just let him keep throwing what he's got at me. Ransom, look at that, 1,000 kills, 227 deaths. Alright, here comes the melee assault that I figured would happen a lot sooner than it did. Because that's really what he needs to do. So I'm going to bring Jackson skirmishers down here and see if I can get into these guys a little bit. Ransom turned to face them and he got flanked. So that could cause problems all the way along my line if it's not resolved. back out, Jackson skirmishers. Alright, good news, good news. I think we're going to be okay here. So I've lost almost 2,000 men now, but he's lost 5,500. Alright, so with just 22 minutes to go, what's helping me here is that I drove off some of these units on my right, which allows Logan to come up and relieve a little bit of the heavy pressure on this brigade here, where they've lost 900 men and got about 1054 on kills. So I think the worst is past, the biggest threat is past. And Brown's going to come again, but he's already kind of shaken. And we'll bring Jackson skirmishers down, we'll hit him on his flank, and that should be enough to make them break. Forrest ended up being the one who broke first, which is interesting, over in the center. But that's really not going to affect me in any way at this point. This isn't a battle I want to continue any longer than possible. You can see why Forrest broke. He was just being hammered by artillery, and he's the only one that was out in the open, really. Just got to last another 7 minutes, and we'll definitely call it a day at the end of this one. And that's the point at which we'll see where everything stands after Chancellorsville. Okay. Perfect. Alright, so outnumbered 2-1. I managed to lose 3,000 men, but inflict 8,000 casualties. Grabbed 742, 1855, so that's nice. So let's go ahead and take a look at where we stand after all of that. 3 career points, because I won the Battle of Chancellorsville. I also won the Battle of Salem Church. So I'm in a position now where I've got to make some more decisions about how best to go about all of this. And I think I'm probably going to go economy. I don't know what army organization gets me at this point, because I can't get to 3,000 men in a brigade. That gives me multiple corps and 6 brigades. That doesn't really help me, I don't think. Alright, I think I'm going to go... Wow, alright, I think I'm going to go economy with all of this. Alright, so let me go ahead and just kind of look around and see what things look like here. Gettysburg, he's at 100 to 105,000 men in his army, which is way less than he had last time when I fought the Gettysburg campaign. So I'm going to go ahead and get myself refit. I need to deal with Brandy Station, and that should reduce the size of his army a little bit, because right now, here's what Gettysburg looks like on day 1. 38,000 men for him. And I'll have to adjust some things here, but that I should be in a favorable position going into Gettysburg. So let's go ahead and get refit, and we'll see what it looks like. Alright, so before I get into refitting my army, I'm going to work my way through the Battle of Brandy Station. Brandy Station, you don't use any of your own troops. It's just an opportunity to earn some more men and money before you go back into another major battle like Gettysburg. So he's going to outnumber me heavily, but I've got such a favorable position, and I've got these great fighting forces with a bunch of mounted infantry and some decent artillery that I should be able to hold easily. And so I'm honestly not going to show much of this battle, because there's not a lot I have to do except just kind of keep an eye out on where the attack comes and shift units back and forth as needed. But for the most part, everything kind of happens on its own, and as long as you have all your cavalry dismounted and in the fortifications, they throw off the Union pretty easily in this one. He kind of comes from every angle, but the artillery and the men kind of shift to meet the different threats, and he never really figures out to attack with everybody all at once. So even though I'm outnumbered 14,000 to 6,000 at this point, I shouldn't have any trouble holding. But if it gets interesting, I'll show you. Otherwise, we will see you before Gettysburg. Alright, here we go. The Battle of Gettysburg. And as you can see, his army has 109 to 114, which is, again, far less than he had last time playing through this. I have not committed all my troops. I found kind of the sweet spot as far as where he begins to scale up. And up until the last 3,000 men or so that I put into my army, he was sitting right at 37,000. So I go in, even without these reinforcements, I go in on day one with a decent size advantage of about 7,000 men and almost twice as many guns. Part of me feels like I want to hold back a little bit and try to prolong the battle, but I know he gets so many reinforcements. This may be one of those battles where I try it both ways and see what happens. So I might go for a day one victory first, and then go back and replay it and try to prolong it to see if I have an advantage to waiting and trying to inflict more casualties. So one thing I can say for sure is that, number one, I have more of an advantage on day one than I did in terms of manpower than I did last time, but especially I have much, much, much better weaponry this time around. None of my troops have, in fact, I'll go ahead and show you a little bit of this. None of my troops have farmers or reboard farmers. Almost all of my brigades are at least 2 stars. So you see Enfield, Springfield 61s, 1841 Mississippi's, Harper's Ferry 1855s, 10-pounder Parrots. So that's the biggest difference for sure this time around, is just I'm so much better armed than I was before that I think that's really going to make a big difference as we get into the next phase of battles, especially going into things like Chickamauga. So hopefully that's going to help, but we'll see. I've also got a lot of money sitting there, as well as still about 3,000 men. So I feel really good about this moving forward. Whether or not it translates into me being able to actually win the campaign is another story. But we're going to go ahead and dive into Gettysburg and see what happens. So my plan for Gettysburg is to hold off on making costly attacks until the situation is more in my favor. So as such, I'm going to sit back with my 7,500 men and let him come at me if he so chooses, but only advance when I have the manpower to do so, especially when I have my flanking force coming down from the north. So we'll see how that strategy works out, but I think it should work pretty well for me. So my strategy to sit back and wait is kind of playing out. I'm starting to advance a little bit here now that I've got some reinforcements. He came at me with Devon's 9th New York, and that ended badly for him. It looks like the first infantry units are going to start advancing toward me now. I've got these 3-star 10-pounder Parrots right here that should do some nice damage to the enemy when they get the chance. What I really want to do with them, though, is get at his artillery as soon as I can get into range and see them a little bit. So we'll hold back right here on this side. We'll start to advance up into these woods, try to drive him out of there, and then I'll bring forward the rest of my infantry. But we're going to let Cutler just get himself all kinds of messed up against me right here. Because I already am going to have a numerical advantage anyway, and if I can inflict more casualties on him, I can just increase that advantage. So interesting, he actually gave up McPherson Ridge without much of a fight at all. He just kind of gave up the position when I drove off Cutler's 147th New York. So we'll just start to advance here a little slowly. Let him continue to come at me. Okay, he didn't completely abandon it, but he's going to let my infantry get into range. I'll be able to deal with Caliph's battery and Devon's 3rd West Virginia pretty easily. I'm going to hold Nicholas right here and keep these guns right here and just start to advance a little bit. And then as I get more reinforcements, I'll continue to push forward. Alright, here comes the Iron Brigade. And the thing with Gettysburg you have to remember is that the Union always gets the reinforcements first in every little phase of the battle until the end when the Confederates finally end up getting more. And that's just historically how it went, so that makes sense. So I've just got to play it safe and play it cautious until the numbers are more favorable for me. And it shouldn't take a real long time for that to happen. We'll just try to use the numerical advantage to drive off his forces. So far, numbers are pretty even as far as men on the field. He's got more guns than me. I've lost about 750 men. He's lost about 950. But that's going to work more and more in my favor as this progresses. Let's go ahead and start advancing a little further up. Make sure that my guns stay supplied. Looks like we're already driving off 2nd Wisconsin. I need to move up and keep my guns on top of him. So here comes my next batch of reinforcements. I've already driven off bits of the Iron Brigade. 147th New York's coming back for more. I'm not entirely sure why. But I see Gabriel Paul coming up here on my left. And I'm bringing all these reinforcements up here, so I'll just extend my line. Bring in some more guns. Alright, Pickett's getting flanked a little bit by Cutler. So we just have to turn a little bit to deal with that. But it's going really well for me so far. The numbers now, I've got about a 5,000 man advantage on the field. But it looks like he's going to start loading up on my left, so I've got to be ready for that. Alright, so I've got him bottled up pretty good up here in this area, and I've been routing him over and over again. I did have Pickett route at one point. That's one of my only 1-star units on the field. But for the most part, I really just have no complaints about how this is going. I'm going to try to drive this cavalry off of Seminary Ridge and see if I can't move up into there. I just want to be careful, though, because I know he's going to get reinforcements from down here. And it looks like my whole center just collapsed all at once. I'm not entirely sure why that is. But maybe I'll just hold back over here on this side for now while I try to inflict some more casualties up on the left. Numbers-wise, I've taken out over 4,000 of his men. At least that, probably more than that, because some of his units have completely dissolved. So we're just going to keep on inflicting casualties and then wait for our forces to come down from up on the north side. We're at 12:01 now, and Howard's 11th Corps is making its appearance on the field. Now, the thing I have to remember with trying to win a day one victory is that I not only have to have Cemetery Hill taken by about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it also can't even be contested when the timer runs out. So I actually have to be pretty aggressive in my move towards Cemetery Hill. So I'm already going to start thinking about shifting in that direction as much as I can. And any new reinforcements I get on the field are going to kind of help me push in that direction. But that means that I have to be a little more aggressive than I really want to be. I got to switch Naylor around and then back him up a little bit. And I got to start pushing down this way. Even if that means sending half my force there just to kind of occupy the majority of his troops. I think I can start shifting some of these units out. I've got more than enough to handle the folks that are currently up there. And then I'll be getting my reinforcements here in the next, probably hour. Maybe not even that long. So I've got 40 minutes to go in this phase of the battle. I should be seeing my reinforcements from the north coming in, I would think, any time now. And I'm rushing all I can to the south as quickly as I can. Trying to, number one, push some of his forces up to the north so that they'll end up running into my 2nd Corps when it comes. So I don't have to march my 2nd Corps all the way down. And I'm more than happy to let him kind of hang on to Oak Ridge right now while I shift further toward the south. It's just a long way to go for my forces as they enter the battlefield. But right now, I've got about a 3,000 man advantage on the field, but both sides will have more coming. So I've got some cavalry now, and hopefully I can use them to maybe drive off some of these units, or maybe just catch some of his units out in the open, or even grab some supplies. I'm trying to keep him engaged as much as possible up here, which means some of these units are going to take a lot of casualties. They're kind of a diversion so that I can move forward toward Cemetery Hill, which doesn't seem to be real heavily defended, although I just may not be able to see it right now. But for the first time, I've got a significant advantage in manpower. I'm up to about almost 2 to 1, but I expect he's going to get more reinforcements. To bring these guys down as quickly as I can. And I'm going to look back here to see if he's got some supplies or something just roaming around. So here comes the tricky part, because Cemetery Hill is basically undefended right now, but I also know that the 12th Corps is going to be coming right up in here, and they're going to probably have 7,000 or 8,000 men with them. And if I go jumping on Cemetery Hill right now and taking that objective, they're just going to roll right up on my flank. And so I've got to get into a decent defensive position to hold. When they come up that hill, I can be ready to drive them right back off. So we'll see how that all works out. Alright, so there's an hour and 40 minutes to go, and I have to remember that I not only have to hold these objectives, but I have to also hold them with enough time that none of them are contested anymore when the timer runs out. Or at least that's true for Cemetery Ridge, or Cemetery Hill. I don't know if that's true for the other ones or not, but I know that if you're still waiting on the timer when the time runs out up here, then it still takes you to the next day. But my main thing right now is waiting for this 12th Corps to come. I want to be in position to deal with them, because there's going to be a whole bunch of them when that happens. I'm going to send this cavalry, and here they come. I just saw the blue line just moved quite a bit, so that 12th Corps is on its way. Here they come. Nice thing is I'm going to get a volley into them just as they're entering the field. And now I got to rush the Snakefoot Brigade over there. This is going to get really tricky now. Especially if these guys drag me into the town, which it looks like they're going to do. Alright, Snakefoot Brigade's in place. We drove off the real Paper Collar Brigade. There's Standard's Brigade right there. Alright, Snakefoot Brigade's got a hold right there. In fact, I may back them up a little bit. So this is going to get really interesting now, because this is definitely not a position I've ever found myself in before. It's a really unique look to the way the battlefield's shaping up, because I've got him bottled up here in the center north of town. He's got troops in town, and then he's got the troops over here southeast of Cemetery Hill, over almost toward Culp's Hill. So I really don't know how this is all going to play out, except that I know that I've got to make sure I take and hold all these objectives. And then I'll just try to look for opportunities to isolate and destroy pockets of his army. So I've taken Oak Ridge. That means I now hold all the objectives. And it looks like McPherson, Oak, and Seminary Ridges don't really have a contested timer. That was really just something that's unique, apparently, to Cemetery Hill. So hopefully Bidwell can hold off these guys, but he's starting to shift more units down, which means I'm going to have to do the same. Hopefully I can destroy some of these guys. Yeah, see, some of these units are just going to break before they can even get that far. And then I've got to start disengaging and re-engaging over here. And I've got all my cavalry sitting out here as well, and I can come in and try to hit somebody if I need to. I probably would have been better off with them out there somewhere. He looks like he's largely just going to hold back, and he's not really going to try to assault me here. Which means I might be able to shift some of this artillery up this way to try and hold him over here. So 55 minutes to go. I've got about 5,000 more men on the field than he does. So what this means is that while I will probably win the battle on the first day, it's not going to be the kind of win that means I shatter his army. So I'll likely play through this again and take a longer approach where I don't rush for a win on the first day and see how his army compares doing it that way and my army compares, to see if it was advantageous for me to do it that way or if I'm better off just sticking with this first day win. Alright, just 24 minutes to go now, and it looks like everything's pretty stable. He's really not making an effort to try and take Cemetery Hill back. I'm starting to push through the town now, and I have a pretty solid battle line of advance. Try to just inflict some more casualties on him as I go along. Lots of artillery firing down, though I don't know how effective they're going to be firing into the town like that. But I don't really completely have a grasp on the number of casualties he's suffered, because so many of his units have completely broken that they don't even show up anymore as having been a part of his army, so that makes it a little hard to kind of see what the real picture is. But I do know I've got him by almost 7,000 men on the field. Alright, we'll zip this thing to the finish and we'll see what it looks like at the end. Alright, so here's what it looks like. Total casualties on the Union side, 18,000 infantry, 909 among the artillery, including 36 guns. On my side, 11,000 and 189 cavalry and 18 men among the artillery, but no guns lost. So, what I want to do now is I want to go and compare what the situation looks like after Gettysburg last time compared to this time, and just see what the overall kind of predicament is. Obviously, he's still got a huge amount of men in his force pool, but nothing near what he had before, and after the Siege of Jackson, we'll get a better look at that. But let me go back and look real quick and I can update you on that information. Okay, so the situation is this. Last time after Gettysburg, he was almost at 200,000, something like 192 to 197 in his army. And his training and his armory were both significantly higher. His armory was up like 90%. And his training was up higher as well. So much, much better situation. I'm going to be facing a less well-equipped, a less experienced army. Whether the numbers translate or not, we will only see when we get to Chickamauga. My numbers are going to be about the same. I'm going to have around 44,000 men by the time I get to Chickamauga. The good news, again, for me, is that it's an army that's much, much better equipped and much more experienced than the army I took into Chickamauga last time. So I think all of that bodes well for me and means that I can probably at least get into 1864 with a chance. So we're going to see when all of that happens. But I feel pretty good about where things stand right now. So I'm going to stop right there. Next episode, we'll get into the Siege of Jackson and into Chickamauga, and we will officially be caught up with this reboot, and we can press ahead and see what happens. So as always, thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for sticking with this whole mess of a reboot of this series. I appreciate so much all of your comments, your questions, your suggestions, your criticisms. All of it is most welcome. Please keep it coming. We will see you again next time. Thanks for watching.